Welcome to another episode of Get to Know Your Community series, where we meet and learn from members of our community that you may not know. My name is Vijay Patel, and I'm happy to be the sponsor and ambassador of this series. One of the joys of talking with nonprofits is discovering the faces, stories, and dreams behind the mission. I'm thrilled to introduce Michael Herschensohn from the Queen Anne Historical Society, and I'm delighted that he has agreed to share a little bit about the organization today. How are you this morning?
Oh, well, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, we're excited to meet you and, just learn about the Queen Anne Historical Society and how it came about and what it's all about and the goal and mission. And excited to hear about it from you.
Well, I hope I can satisfy your curiosity.
Yeah. So tell me, if you are ready. I just wanted to give you a minute to kind of get settled in. But yeah, we'd just love to understand what's the history? How did it come about? Because we were looking online and we see that there isn't a location or phone number and that kind of thing. So I thought, is it something that's a little more of a group that's a passion project? Are there members?
Well, one of the things that so the Queen Anne Historical Society was founded the in the 1970s, as so many organizations in Seattle were, and it was dedicated to preserving the history of Queen Anne, both in terms of documenting uh, historic events and also preserving the historic buildings of Queen Anne. So it has this double mission, if you like. But the one of the downfalls of historical societies, especially volunteer-run historical societies, is they begin collecting objects, three-dimensional objects related to the history of the place. And then that leads them to opening a museum that costs them gobs of money
Yes.
and requires a whole bunch of fundraising and stuff like that. So the
Right.
Queen Anne Historical Society chose not to have a museum and not to collect three-dimensional objects. And that's the reason there is no place. There's a P.O. box. We have what we call our clubhouse, a place where we meet as the board of the organization. We hold public meetings in public places on Queen Anne. And we offer, let's say, regular but unpredictable tours of the neighborhood as well.
Well, that sounds
Last weekend there was a tour of the historic grave sites in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which is a huge cemetery on Queen Anne. It has, I learned on the tour this week, that it has there are 50,000 grave sites in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and there are an additional 50,000 vacancies. So there's room for everybody who lives on Queen Anne now, if you like. But anyway, so it really was a strategic decision not to have a building, not to have a place where people could come. And furthermore, that whole logic was sort of compounded because, well, first of all, the Queen Anne Historical Society, after it got started, and it was an offspring of the Queen Anne Community Council, which was, and people started collecting stuff related to the history of Queen Anne. And one guy, Gary Sapp, got this go on living in people's garages, and that it had to move to, they had to actually create what they all called an archive.
Yeah.
And then and we were really fortunate, and I really don't know for how long, but I think it was a very long time, like 20 years, the Queen Anne Historical Society had a free office in the Bayview retirement home. And
Oh, yes.
that essentially was our archives. And there were tons of things collected there. A huge number of women. Oh, and then about let's say 5 years ago, sort of everything in my life is pre and post pandemic. But anyway,
I understand
a
completely.
few years before the pandemic, we were asked to vacate the space in Bayview. And I actually wrote a really mean article attacking Bayview for throwing us out. And then I decided this is really stupid, that why there was no need to be vindictive. They've been nice for so long. And so I turned the article around before I published it. And I published this article because I used to do a monthly article in what is still known as the Queen Anne Magnolia News.
Okay,
But
I'm familiar.
but it has kind of collapsed under the weight of history, if you want. And so they no longer do that kind of publishing. But anyway, so I wrote an article that was just incredibly flattering about the Bayview retirement home, thanking them for everything they'd done, and that we would be thrilled to locate another free space on Queen Anne. And so as a result, just my strategy worked, obviously, because it would have been pointless to alienate these people. Yeah. So in any case, yes. So two things happened. One is that we did get a free space in a neighborhood church, which goes on today. So we have free office space. But we also decided that we needed to evaluate everything that was in our files. And we separated them into two kinds: those to keep forever and those to throw out. But those that we were going to keep forever, we decided to digitize. So we digitized everything in the collection.
Excellent.
Gave those things to Seattle Pacific University's library. And therefore, we no longer really have a physical archive. If we bring new things into the collection, we digitize them and move them to Seattle Pacific University, so where they live forever. And we don't have to worry about fires. Well, they're not our materials anymore. And everything that we've collected and that we collect is now either we have an electronic version of it, and we also have we have an online like in Box or Dropbox, and then we have a version on a hard drive to back up Dropbox or Box. There's a kind of mix there. And the idea being that the hard drive will not go bankrupt and disappear. So that's the logic there.
Well, I appreciate the explanation. That's really helpful to understand, and really just so wise, because you guys were sort of ahead of the time. I've been involved and I'm aware of a number of organizations and nonprofits similarly who, wrestle with that, and they've had to find a solution to all the stuff, if you will, and
right,
where they live and all of that. And digitizing really is what many of them are now starting to realize they have to do. And it just takes time, and to have a resource like, the university right there is wonderful. And just that everyone's on board around that. That's just great.
And we got a grant to do the digitization, and we hired somebody. So we didn't sit there in front of a scanner for years.
Yeah, no, that's smart, and that's just great.
We thank Michael for spending time with us today and getting to know more about the Queen Anne Historical Society. Check back for features of more wonderful organizations and businesses right here in our very own neighborhoods. Thank you for watching.